you can find your advantage somewhere where it is like, my suffering, I believe, although it was rough, whether it be my injuries in athletics, whether it be being told to change my name by my alcoholic father growing up, I can see now that I am everything I am because of my suffering. And I believe everyone is. And so, I mean, going back to wielding your suffering, everyone has the potential. And I despise the notion that no one can be something because of where they're at, where they come from. If anything, you're put in a position to lead others, right? Be the light for others, to lead out of the darkness. And I just honestly have to go back to, wielding your suffering, and wield it nobly, bear your suffering nobly, because you will bring not only yourself through the storm, but so many others.
Hey, this is a quick shout out from one of our awesome sponsors. Check this out. Thank you to Tracy down at Tranquil Turtle Massage in downtown Coeur D'Alene. Look, my wife and I, we see Tracy and her team every single month for couples massage, and it is the best thing. Tracy is a master massage specialist and a Hanu Ashiatu trainer. You need to reach out to Tracy and her team. Make sure that you tell them that I sent you, and you'll get $25 off your next massage. Also, while you're there, check out CDA Brows, Body, and Ink. Make sure to tell Tracy that I sent you, and you'll save $100 on your next tattoo, brows, and plasma tightening services.
Connor, you're a motivational speaker, former D1 football player and coach, anti-human trafficking advocate, you're a speaker, and so much more, man. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me on, man. It's a pleasure.
I'd like to kick things off by going back a bit. Like, where did you grow up, and what was childhood like for you, man?
Yeah, so grew up in Olympia, Washington, or Tumwater, Washington. I say Olympia, but it's a small subset of it. Childhood was great for me. Grew up playing every sport under the sun. Had my struggles for sure, but loved growing up there. And growing up, and that's where I fell in love with football.
Yeah, come on, man. I grew up in Tri-Cities, Washington out there. And so lived it and then moved to Seattle right out of high school, lived there for about 15 years and decided to come out here to Idaho in 2014. But yeah, man, very familiar with the Tumwater, Olympia area there for sure. When you were growing up, like you played a lot of sports there, who was that person that had the biggest influence you on growing up?
I mean, other than my mother, I would say in the sports arena, it would have been my actually offensive line coach in college. My relationship with my father was, very rough to say the least. And he really took me under my wing and actually put me in a position where I wanted to become a coach at first to, be the person that he was for me. And so that, my coaches really were the people that took me under my wing, were those strong male figures in my life, but him specifically.
Man, it's so important to have those male role models. I would say that's where I lacked in when I was in high school, and I tried to go to college for about a year, but it's so important to have those male role models in your life for sure, man. In fact, the guy that was a teacher of mine in high school, he taught entrepreneurship and sports and entertainment marketing. It was the only class I paid attention to. Every other class I showed up stoned, but like, it's because of him that I actually wanted to go into entrepreneurship and do sort of a business thing. It's so important on that. I mean, grit and perseverance is something that you're familiar with. And for folks out there that are trying to find strength, the perseverance to kind of battle through adversity, like what practical tips can you give them to help them kind of get through that or find that strength they need?
Yeah, I mean, whenever I speak to, young athletes, coaches, players, I mean, just people in general, because I think this applies.
Yeah.
One thing I say is a verse, actually. I don't care if you're religious or not, but these words rang true to me is Romans 5:3-4 that says, not only so, but we glory in our sufferings, because suffering produces perseverance, character, and character hope. And for me, throughout my journey of, the 7 season-ending injuries and, using the hardships I went through with my father at a young age as well, I really relied on that hope piece. So it's like, maybe I'm going through this for a reason. Maybe someone's benefiting from this who I have, I don't even know, just because they see me, nobly bearing my suffering. And so I didn't know if that was the case, but I really relied on that idea, and it got me to where I am.
Man, that's so good, dude. So good, dude. And a daily word, spending time in the Bible for me is a non-negotiable, man. And reflecting on verses and proverbs every day, man. It's so important at least for me, to really start the day and set the tone there. and I love morning routines. I'm a big guy on morning routines there. What's your morning routine like to kind of help you get right in the right mindset to start the day?
Yeah, I mean, from the standpoint of, it kind of varies. I know what I'm doing in the morning, regardless of what that means.
Yep.
I do have a fluid routine. Sometimes I always wake up around 4:30, 4 in the morning, and I either train, work out, or I spend time writing, or I spend time reading, and something where, I'm away from my phone for a bit and I'm just, by myself. I found that 4 o'clock in the morning, no one wants to get in touch with me. So, I don't have any outside distractions. And so for my morning routine, it fluctuates for sure. I'm not this person who has this, ice bath right away, get up, train, do all these things. But I do each morning have, the things where that's my time for me, where I spend time writing, I spend time getting my, my mind right for the day, whatever that means.
So important, man. Like I'm a morning guy as well. 4 o'clock, 4:30, I'm usually up. And, it's funny. I married someone who's a night person. So I'm usually asleep by 9:30. And so, we got to figure that out, at times. We've been married for 18 years. So we've got it kind of locked in now. But at first it was like, oh, this is what married life's like. I'm going to bed at 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, But, man, it's so good to just like, I think, like Ed Milet talks about, if you get up early enough, then you can kind of split your day into 4 days in a single day, right?
Yeah.
Like each day is considered a 6-hour time block is what he does there. How important though, is it to focus on the process versus the outcome?
Yeah, I actually, mutual connection of ours, Tyler Dickerhoff, actually, I just spoke to one of his teams. And this is something I talked about, is that throughout, I look at a lot of things through an athletic lens. And when I was goal-oriented all throughout my athletic career, I will say goals were the thing that gave me the most pain. And I know that sounds weird, but because a lot of my journey in athletics, I didn't have those goals weren't under a big enough, umbrella of a mission. I didn't have that mission. And I think goals you need, because you need that incremental success that you can measure. But if they're not under a bigger purpose, then when you don't succeed and you don't meet those goals, you think, why me? Or at least in my experience. And when you are mission oriented, you say, what's next? That goal didn't, that goal didn't, pan out, but what's next? What's the next right decision? Right?
Yeah.
Because we're all going to fail. And just because one goal's done doesn't mean the mission's over. Right?
Totally. Stack the next one on and start going. Right. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. So important to just not hit your goal and then get comfortable. Right. Like I think I just can never get complacent. Right. Like I'm always trying to get to that next level of whatever it is. And even when I had a conversation with Ed Milet and, him and I on Zoom, it was like the greatest conversation I ever had, but he's like, let's talk about CANI. It was an acronym. And he said, constant and never ending improvement. And I have that on my wall in my office. And when I see that every day, I'm like, okay, how can I get better today? Right. How can I get better today? One of the things that you talked about as I was reading through your newsletter you sent out called The Road Less Traveled, you talked about discomfort and honesty being two real crucial traits of a question when in pursuit of growth there. Can you deep dive into that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I think so often that it's easy to lie to ourselves, but make everyone else believe it's the truth. Like I could say that I'm going to go train in the morning, or I could tell a bunch of people, I get up and train at 4 a.m. and they don't know any different, but I know. Right. Mm-hmm. So you need to be honest. Right. And, those questions, like, sit on your bed. I heard someone say once, just sit on your bed, sit with yourself and be honest with yourself and audit your day of what that looked like. And were you using your time correctly? Were you the best father you could be? Were you the best brother you could be? And, I think that's a never-ending journey. To your point, using Ed Milet's analogy, I love one of his analogies or sayings that he uses is blissful dissatisfaction. He talks about, and I love that, and that's why I talk about continuous growth, is because I'm in the pursuit of the impossible, becoming that perfect version of myself. And he uses an analogy or a theoretical situation that we're going to meet the version of us that we could have been when we die. Right.
Yeah.
But I've taken it a step further, and he might have done this, I've never heard, but I thought of it in the sense of, with my experience with my father and my family, that not only will I meet the version of myself that I could have been, everyone I love and cherish is going to meet that version of me as well. And what are they going to think if I'm not close to that version? Like, why did I deprive them of meeting that guy?
Come on.
Right.
Come on. That's so good, dude. Gosh, about a year ago, I was in a men's mentorship group for all of 2022. And the very first meeting that I had with these guys that I didn't know, the homework assignment was to write your own obituary. I'd never thought about that before. Never even I was like, wow, okay. And then as I did it though, here I am, 42 years old. I'm in my office and my eyes are just filling up with tears as I'm writing this thing, realizing I was not living up to that potential of what I want my final version to be, man. And that was so eye-opening for me. And I started to really make changes in my life and my marketing, my business, and my family, like to meet that person that I was writing about in the obituary, man. Crazy exercise if people want to take that out there, dude. Really woke me up there. For you, I mean, we talk about growth. What are you learning right now?
That's a good question. I think right now I'm learning to, one thing I struggle with honestly is that when I've gone to speak at high schools and universities and on podcasts here, I have trouble believing in myself that my story is worth sharing and perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
That just comes from a long line of, honestly just devaluing myself and
Sure.
underestimating myself and, thinking I'm not worth that. And so I personally believe I'm working through that. And, I'm worried that when I go to speak at, some high school that no one's going to get anything out of it. It's not a good story. And then I have, guys come up to me and, really struggling with their issues and their problems and things like that.
Yeah.
And so, it's something that I have to get over. And I found value in that through, hearing the stories when kids come up to me saying, hey, what do I do? Like, you help me with your story, but I'm struggling with this over here. Right. My family, I found my mother dead in a car. How do I help my siblings?
Wow.
Right. And to me, I don't know the answer to that, but and I try to help those kids as best as I can. But the fact that someone asks me that advice and gets value out of my story makes me realize, all right, my story is worth sharing, because I do have, like many people don't think that, but I do have a lack of self-confidence. And I need to work on that every single day.
It's so important. And I, I've done over 450 podcast episodes since I started this thing. And there's still days where I go through and I question my confidence level, right? Like I feel pretty good on the mic, but there's definitely days when I go, am I really making an impact with this thing? Is it all worth that time that I'm putting into it? And you get that one person shoot you a DM or come up to you after your talk, right? And say, man, that impacted me. I had that similar story. I mean, I'm 43. I didn't share my story until I was 39, dude. I held that inside for over, probably half my life. Right. And I finally had that courage to share it. When I did, it was a weight off my shoulder. And then it started to open up opportunities. The more that I shared it, the more I got comfortable. Right. And so, man, it's so huge to do that. I want to get into, you say on your, that you're an anti-human trafficking advocate. You traveled to India even a few years back to go help combat human trafficking. What a cool experience. But can you tell me about that experience? And then how are you involved in the human trafficking sort of side of things right now, or anti-human trafficking thing right now?
Yeah. So that experience was a really, eye-opening one for sure. The one that actually helped me in athletics, to be honest. But one of my coaches during college came up to me and said, hey, Connor, I think you have the heart for this. I've been involved with this organization that goes over to India and, does work and at this safe house where girls who had been rescued ages, 8 to 20 years old, having spent years of their life being trafficked. And we went over there, and honestly, our job when we were there was to honestly just be kind, to just interact with them and try to rehabilitate their image of males, because they had been, all of their suffering was at the hands of, males 20, 30, years older than them. It made me realize that there was 7 billion people on the planet, 8 billion people who had no idea I played football and didn't care, that we are not the main characters. And I think we lose sight of that, a lot of the time, especially here in the US. And, as of, right now, today, speaking on this podcast about, about human trafficking, speaking at high schools about my experiences and things over there, in the works, doing some fundraising things that I will probably announce later on, actually in the coming weeks. It's going to be a pretty cool thing. Looking forward to it.
Nice.
But just sharing the stories of, the people who don't have a voice. I mean, the girl who was trafficked for years of her life, and then because of that wants to get into, counseling because of it. And so finding a way to be selfless when, you had just gone through these travesties it blew my mind. And, I had 7 season-ending injuries through my career, and, all of a sudden my knees and my shoulder didn't hurt so bad when I heard those stories,
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, I had a guy on my show early on when I started podcasting, a guy named Jonathan Espy, I think was his name. And he is based out of Thailand, and him and his wife are missionaries over there. And his ministry is training guys that go into strip clubs and things like that in Thailand and rescue girls that have been put in there, or rescue those human traffic victims. And then he has a campus where he raises those girls and boys up and gives them this home, this safe place, man. And it's so cool to see what he's doing. But man, the stories that he can tell and that you probably saw and heard, unbelievable, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly just a devaluation, in my opinion, of female life in other forms of the world.
Yeah,
I mean, and it's hard to realize that, because you have to look in the mirror a little bit, that because of the supply and demand, the demand is there because of males, and so especially all age males. But that's why I enjoy talking about it to young males, to that are exposed to, whether it be pornography or, lust, or like things like that, where it's like, no, like, we need to learn to treat women correctly. Like, that it totally objectifies them. And in the world, women are seen as objects, and it's so painful to see 8-year-old girls having to go through, living through a safe house, being sold by their families to,
right.
That just blows your mind. Things you can't conceive here, because that just, we don't think it happens, although it's everywhere. In every big city in America, there's human trafficking,
I mean, I live in a pretty small town. I would say 50,000, 55,000 people out here. And it's interesting that you'll see like a sweep where, all of a sudden there's 5, 6, 7 kids missing in over a 2-week period or something like that, right in the area. And then it doesn't happen for a couple months. And, you're like, man, like, what's going on? And we've seen that a couple different times happen in this area. We're off the highway, 100 miles from Canada. We're close to the border. Very easily targeted people out here, man. And it's just sad to see when that happens there, man. Pretty crazy there.
Yeah.
One of the guys that I saw on your Instagram feed that you have a picture with, I think it was a couple years old, but Inky Johnson. Now, this guy to me is one of those dudes that is like the GOAT. Like, he is the unicorn guest speaker on my podcast someday that I will have, but like, what was that experience like meeting him, and what about him inspires you, man?
Oh my God. So I listened to the same Inky Johnson speech before every high school game. Like, growing up, like, that was like, it was the same YouTube video that I had seen. It was that. And I watched like Earl Campbell highlights. It was like my favorite thing.
Come on.
And so I believe it was my junior year in college. My FCA leader was like, "Hey, Connor, we got this, all men's breakfast at this church out in, I believe it was Ankeny, Iowa. And, we got a speaker coming in. I think you'd enjoy it." I was like, "Oh, who's the speaker?" He's like, "A guy named Inky Johnson." I was like, "Get out of here." Like, this was like, I'm a Patriots fan, but that was like Tom Brady for me, like meeting. Yeah. And so getting to meet him, sharing a little bit about my story and how he helped me, and listening to him, every day. It's like, when you get in proximity to those people, it's just like, I left there on like cloud 9, and just, you get rejuvenated, and it's hard to describe it. Just as an orator, he has an ability to move people that just very few, if any, I believe, can. But that was another one of those things where, when getting to share a little bit of my story with him, when he, found some value in that, I was like, that floored me, because I devalued my story. And then someone who I had looked up to and aspired, to be like for so long, that was another one of those things where it's like, maybe I do have something to share.
Yeah. Come on, man. Oh, so cool, dude. I mean, throughout this journey of life, like you've been through a lot, you've had a lot of surgeries, you're impacting people, you're traveling the world there. But what's the most important thing that you've learned throughout this life journey so far?
Man, that's a big question there, Erik.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
no, I think it's honestly, it's for so long, I really struggled with praying for the wrong things. And I say this throughout my football career. I prayed for the 100-yard games. I prayed for the, touchdown the social media shout outs and all these things and all these, I was searching for external validation. Right. And I realized my first game in college, I ended up making a tackle on a sideline. And even though I was a running back, I was on special teams. I made a tackle on the sideline, and I look back, and our whole sideline's going absolutely nuts. I saw my teammates crying for me because they, were so happy. And in that moment, I knew that everything I prayed for didn't come true, but everything I should have been praying for did, as far as finding my self-worth. And that would have never happened if I didn't learn how to wield my suffering along the way. And so being able to find a way to wield your suffering, I think, is everyone's superpower. It really is. Like you look at the Inky Johnsons, the Nelson Mandelas of the world, these like crazy figures that Nelson Mandela could have easily just waited out his days in a jail cell, right? He could have done those things, but finding a way to just make the next right decision, last one more day, like just by doing so, you learn how to wield your suffering, making your life and the lives of others around you exponentially better.
Come on, dude. That's so true. So true, man. You touched base on this earlier. You've got some big stuff coming up. Obviously, you want to wait a couple weeks before you can release that. But what else outside of that is coming up next for you? Like, what are you most excited about right now?
Honestly, I mean, I've gotten over the last few months, I've gotten some opportunities to speak with some people, being connected with guys like you just through networking. And I felt that at this point, being able to sharing my story, it seems like it's carrying some weight with some people, which means so much to me. And I don't take that lightly, but I just feel like I'm in a groove right now where I'm bettering myself mentally. I'm becoming a better speaker. I'm getting, the practice in, and I'm participating in that blissful dissatisfaction. Right. And I see myself bettering my life, and then, hopefully the other lives of, people around me. And, that's a cool feeling when you're in a rhythm and finding yourself. And, I think I struggled with that for a long time, finding who I really wanted to be. And I think that gets me the most excited, is because, I'm on the pursuit of the impossible, becoming that unattainable version of my best self.
Best way to be, brother. What's your message to the world, man?
Whew, that's another big question, Erik. And I appreciate those big questions. I think my message to the world is that no matter where you come from, whether you had, gold-plated, everything growing up, or, came from nothing, that you can find your advantage somewhere where it is like my suffering, I believe, although it was rough, whether it be my injuries in athletics, whether it be being told to change my name by my alcoholic father growing up, I can see now that I am everything I am because of my suffering. And I believe everyone is. And so, I mean, going back to wielding your suffering, everyone has the potential. And I despise the notion that no one can be something because of where they're at, where they come from. If anything, you're put in a position to lead others, right? Be the light for others, to lead out of the darkness. And I just honestly have to go back to, wielding your suffering, and wield it nobly, bear your suffering nobly, because you will bring not only yourself through the storm, but so many others.
Come on, man. That's so good, dude. I love that. Man, I like to finish my shows off with a fun question. I'm a music guy, so I love to ask the question, like, what type of music do you listen to? Or is there a band or someone that you like to listen to the most?
That's an interesting question, because I I am equal opportunity for all music. My playlist list is weird. I got as much Cody Johnson on as I have Tupac and Michael
Nice.
Bublé.
Okay.
You know, like
Come on.
I'm all over the place. You know, I love music, and so whether it be country music, you know, like I'm more so like older rap music, like 90s, you know, to
Yeah.
early 2000s, right? But I mean, my top 25 playlist is all over the place.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been listening to Jason Aldean today, to
Yeah.
worship music in the morning, to the old school band Seven Mary 3 all day, to
Yeah,
the Tron
after
soundtrack.
After Tupac, I'll throw on some Kirk Franklin, you know, like, you know,
Yeah, come on, dude.
Yeah.
That is awesome. My wife loves Kirk Franklin, dude. That is so
Yeah.
funny. So that so good, dude. Connor, you're an absolute world changer, man. Thank you so much for taking time and joining me on the show, dude. This is awesome, dude. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate it, Erik.
Thank you so much for checking out the show today. I really appreciate it. I hope that my guest was able to bring you some amazing wisdom and knowledge to help you continue to fight for your goals, your dreams, and your purpose. If you could do me one big favor and just hit that subscribe button, I would so appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. Keep changing the world. I believe in you. Have an amazing day.